Hi guys, how have you been? So 2 weeks ago, I posted a video of a gouache painting I did, but the result wasn't so great. I really wasn't satisfied with it, but I did learn a few good lessons from it. So this week, I decided it would be good to revisit those lessons, put them into practice, and see how much I've grown. I videoed the entire process and I'm excited to share it with you guys. Before we get into it, I like to start this off with a positive note by sharing a poem that I really like. This poem was written by Robert Frost and is called A Passing Glimpse. I often see flowers from a passing car that are gone before I can tell what they are. I want to get out of the train and go back to see what they were beside the track. I name all the flowers I'm sure they weren't. Not fireweed loving where woods have been burnt. Not bluebells grazing a tunnel mouth. Not lupine living on sand and drought. Was something brushed across my mind that no one on earth will ever find? Heaven gives its glimpse only to those not in a position to look too close. I really like this poem because it reminds me about the small things that we see every day that are sometimes overlooked but are really quite beautiful. For me, the things of nature that I find beautiful are usually small streams of water, maybe a dewdrop on a flower, maybe a really nice healthy looking grass, maybe a cat playing with its tail, or a chicken drinking water. It's the simple things, but it sometimes are really beautiful to witness. I used this poem as inspiration when deciding what I would paint. I knew I wanted to paint something that was seemingly insignificant, but was beautiful in many ways. So I scoured Pinterest to find that perfect picture. It took me a while, but I landed on the perfect one. Now, it had water in it, and I was afraid of painting water because I didn't do so well the last time. And I wanted to take it slow this time. Just focus on the gouache and not necessarily painting water because that is a next kettle of fish. But as it turned out, it was the perfect picture for me. It really was something that resonated with the poem to me, so I decided to stick with it and give it a try. Now for this video, I wanted to show more of the materials that I was using for the piece because I realized I didn't really do that in the previous videos, so I hope this is helpful. I have my Himi Jelly Gouache that I'll be using for the painting. I have the paintbrushes that I think I will be using for the entire video. Maybe I'll take up some more, I don't recall. And of course my palette, which I actually washed before filming. Yay! Do you know what else I did before filming? Watch the tutorial, which was one of the lessons I learned the hard way when I painted with gouache previously. The tutorials I watched was actually a YouTube video by Jess Chung, and I watched maybe two. The total amount was about 30 minutes of tutorial, and I learned so much. So much. I maybe forgot a few of the tips, but some of them really stood out to me, and I thought, I did not know that. I should have known that. And one of them was that water can reactivate gouache, which I knew because I do spray water on the gouache palette that you see on the right to reactivate it when it gets dry. But I didn't really think that if my paintbrush is wet and I paint over what I have already painted, I can accidentally reactivate the paint and cause it to smudge unintentionally or cause whatever additional layer I'm putting over it to not be as bright. So I learned that I should actually allow it to dry properly and then put a coat over it, or to be extremely careful when applying a new coat onto an already painted coat. I also learned from Jess Chung that lighter colors dries darker and darker colors dry lighter, which I feel like I was beginning to notice that, but I didn't really know what I was seeing. I thought it was just mistakes that I was making. But turns out I did kind of notice it, especially with watercolor. I wonder if it's something with watercolor as well. Because when I put down a darker color, sometimes it came back a bit lighter, but when I put down a light color, it came out darker than I really wanted it to. Luckily, gouache is forgiving and you can always put an additional layer over it to correct your mistake. Now, I highly recommend that you go check out Jess Chung because she was helpful for me, so she might be helpful for you if you're looking to paint with gouache. I'm not sure if you noticed, but I didn't do much outlining with my pencil this time. I only blocked in the major forefront scene, which was the rocks and the waterfall. I didn't outline any clouds or any mountains or any grass. I just left it very minimal when it came to my sketch. And that's because I learned that if I paint over my outline with the gouache, it will completely disappear. So that was the next lesson I learned, and I'm practicing it this time. You might also notice that I painted mountains and a little hint of trees in the background, but it doesn't really clearly show that in the picture. However, I just felt like instead of making the painting look like a blurred background, I wanted to actually put details there. So I just went on my creativity and decided to imagine what I think would be there. And I thought mountains would be a good one. And while I didn't really plan a color palette because I'm going with the picture that I'm looking at, I decided to make the mountains a bit mahogany, like with a red hue, because it's sunset. And why go for blue or green? I wanted to go for that nice, warm color palette. So I went with a mahogany color. And now that I think about it, that's also in line with one of my lessons learned from my previous wash painting, which was to be more intentional with my color palette. But I didn't really plan a color palette this time. It was just something that I thought of in the moment, and I think it worked out pretty great. One of the things that I did with this painting that I don't think I've ever done before was I actually painted it section by section. What I mean is, usually when I'm painting a landscape or something that I'm looking at, I actually paint the entire canvas or paper first. Like, I block in all the dark colors. I'm trying to cover the entire paper or piece with paint, and I never really stop and try to put in all the details in a section. I think I did it that way in the past because that is how I usually see oil painters do it. And I guess that's a way to simplify the painting before getting too stuck on the details. However, I remember watching someone painting a Ghibli scene, and I think she just focused on different sections at a time and went down on the paper slowly. And I'm not sure why she did that, but for some reason I started doing it too. And it felt so much better to me. It felt like I was just focusing on a single section and just working on that, trying to perfect that. I wasn't really focused on anything else or how it looked because I hadn't painted it yet. I wasn't feeling bad about it. I guess it's sort of like when you're cleaning a room or an entire house and you start with just a single room first or a single section of the room instead of just trying to clean the entire thing in one go. It was just less overwhelming. I was a bit intimidated by the rocks because while I was just looking at the picture, I wasn't sure what color I was seeing. I know that rocks appear gray and it's easy to just associate it with gray, but I just felt like it wasn't really gray. There were other colors there. There was a bit of blue and, of course, the gold from the sunset, but I was trying my best to see what other colors there are. I didn't want to just start painting this gray stone and it just looked like dirt or sand. I wanted it to look just like the picture. Then there was the issue of the texture of the stone, which I really struggled to get. I didn't want it to look too choppy. I wanted it to look smooth like the picture but also have those rigid edges. It was really a fight, and I ended up doing a stone, painting it, going back to the one before. It was like an experiment, really. If you see me closing the gouache container at times, it's really because I don't want the paint to dry out. And during the entire process, I sometimes forgot to close it. I would take out paint and put it on my palette, but then I would forget to close the gouache container and it would start to dry out, which can make it very difficult to work with the paint. However, what I do sometimes is I would spray my paint with some water and close it to keep it moist. It doesn't always help. I know that Himi does provide a brand of a liquid that you can use to spray it, and I do have that, but mine finished some time ago, so now I only have plain water in the container and I just spray it with that. I hope there is no bad lesson to learn from that. I hope I don't ruin my Himi paint by doing that, but so far it helps to do the job. At this point, I was a bit worried about my rocks. They looked very cartoonish, like something you'd see in an anime, like a dark anime maybe. And I didn't like the texture of them, especially the one on the lower one right there. But I still took frequent breaks and I kept going and going and going and told myself not to give up because after all, this is a learning process. I believe my battery died here and I did not realize, but luckily I didn't paint too much before noticing and getting it charged, and it was a good time to get another break. Now I remember painting this rock and thinking that I really liked how it looked. It had a softer look and I felt like I captured it. It wasn't as rigid as the rest. To me, the rest kind of looked like ice cubes and I wasn't sure if I liked the texture. However, I'll be honest, when I started really painting that last rock and I stepped away, it started to come together. It started to kind of look like the stand of stones. I didn't really hate it anymore. Maybe I just needed to complete it to see it all together, instead of really focusing on individual stones. I actually struggled a bit with getting each straw of grass straight. I felt like it was the brush I was using, but I wasn't sure which brush to use. When I put down the paint, sometimes it didn't really cover the paper well. I was still seeing the color from beneath. But if I made it too thick, it still did not give me that clean look. So, I don't know. Maybe I needed to get a different brush, but I don't think I have that in my arsenal. Maybe I need to do some more research on that. Before painting this patch of grass, I contemplated waiting until I did the pond first because, as you can see from the picture, the pond is behind the grass. The grass overlaps it and would be more to the front. But if you know my history with water and painting it, then you'll understand why I left the water last this time. Now, when I started painting the water, I told myself not to get confused by the ripples, but just try to look at all the colors I can see. Try to simplify it, if I can. I felt like maybe that way it would come out looking great. I didn't know if I was gonna do it right. And when I first put down that dark section with the gold light, I wasn't really liking it, but I said, no, it's gonna look good after. Just keep going, just keep going. I was very anxious about the water. I could see that I was making progress and it was looking okay, but it still looked very messy and choppy, and I was worried about the right side with the dark area. But I thought maybe if I add some glitter, some light, it would sort of look like water, and that maybe when I added the remaining straws of grass that were hanging in the water, maybe it would bring it together. But I still felt like there was an emptiness at the bottom, and so I added a little rock that I feel like I can see in the picture. I'm not sure if it's a rock or maybe a patch of dirt, but I just felt like maybe it would cover up some of that emptiness. I eventually went in and added a lighter color of brown into that side of the water because I felt like it would give it a more glistening look. Maybe that flat patch of brown that I had wasn't really doing it. I really wasn't comfortable with it, and I felt like it was distracting me from the water. And it would be such a shame for the entire piece to look so nice and then the water just looks so bad. Not to mention, I did not feel very confident about water to begin with. My strategy for the waterfall was to try to capture all the colors that I could see instead of just thinking, okay, water is clear, but water is blue. I wanted to put down the colors that I saw. That way, I couldn't go wrong. Because if I started trying to paint the waterfall based on what my mind told me or what I thought water is, then I know I would go wrong. Definitely. Adding the white bubbles of water, I'm not sure if I should call them bubbles. Ripples? I don't know what to call them, but adding those little white balls aside that I see in the picture was my favorite part. Because immediately as I did that, I could see it. I could really see the waterfall. It was coming. I could see that it was coming along. And that was the best feeling ever. And finally, I didn't forget, I went in to add those straws of grass that was overlapping into the water. And of course, some final touch ups just to really nail it because I was loving that water. I mean, I was really loving it. I was having such a good time seeing how it was coming out. I loved it. And now for the final look. I was so excited. In total, I had about 10 hours of video while filming this that was sped up. But some of that time included, removing the paint, setting up. Maybe it was about 8.5 hours, give or take. And that was spread across 3 days. So I really took a lot of breaks and made sure that I was not burnt out. I really enjoyed this process. I felt like just painting from a reference without making up things from my mind really helped and challenged me because I could see things like the rocks that appeared gray to me, but I would challenge my mind to see not just the gray but other colors that were there that my mind did not want to believe. Even in the water, I saw blue, but honestly, there were lots of gold too. So, what do you think? Do you like it? Because I really do. Now I'm gonna rate this 100%. Not that I've ever rated my other ones before, but I'm super proud of this. Because you know why? Not only is this my best gouache painting, but this must be my best painting ever. It's so beautiful. I love it so much, and I'm so proud of myself because it was a challenge. I can't believe I really caught the water. It looks so great. Even stones. I don't mind the stones anymore, those little ice cubes. They're perfect. And that's not the only great thing about this. I actually learned something new. And that is, painting on a small paper is actually really fun. You see, usually I paint on a whole canvas or maybe something as big as a folder leaf or bigger, and it can be very time consuming and intimidating. But painting on something this small, maybe it was about 1/3 of a folder leaf, was very fun and less daunting. So I'll definitely be doing it again. That's it from me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. It was great. If you liked this video, then let me know by leaving a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more of my art, whether they're good or bad, then subscribe. Bye!